Imagine a world untouched by the horrors of the Great War. Picture the serene landscapes, the bustling cities, and the vibrant cultures that thrived in the early 20th century. A world where the daily lives of people continued uninterrupted, where the dreams and aspirations of millions were not shattered by the sound of gunfire. A world where the guns of August 1914 never roared, where the call to arms was never heard, and the young men of Europe did not march off to war, leaving behind their families and futures. This is the world we will explore. A world where World War I never happened. A world where diplomacy and dialogue prevailed over conflict and chaos. Imagine the possibilities, the innovations, and the progress that could have been achieved in a world at peace. World War I was a seismic event. It was a conflict that engulfed nations, devastated landscapes, and claimed millions of lives. The trenches, the battles, the sheer scale of destruction, it was unprecedented. It reshaped the political and geographical landscape of the 20th century. The Treaty of Versailles, the redrawing of borders, the emergence of new nations, all were direct consequences of the war. Its absence would have left the world a very different place. Cities would have continued to grow and flourish, cultures would have continued to evolve, and the course of history would have taken a different path. The war's impact was profound. It left scars on the land and on the hearts of those who lived through it. The devastation, the loss, the trauma. It was a collective experience that shaped a generation. It led to the collapse of empires, the rise of ideologies, and the birth of new political movements. The old world order was dismantled, and a new one emerged from the ashes. And a global conflict that would forever change the course of human history. The seeds of World War II were sown in the aftermath of World War I, leading to even greater destruction and loss. But what if it never happened? What if the world had been spared the horrors of the Great War? How different would our world be today? Would we have avoided the rise of totalitarian regimes, the economic turmoil, and the social upheavals that followed? What if the world continued on its pre-1914 trajectory? A world where peace and prosperity reigned, where the potential for human progress was limitless. Join us as we delve into this alternate history, exploring the possibilities and imagining a world unshaken by the Great War. In 1914, Europe was dominated by empires. These empires, with their vast territories and diverse populations, were the result of centuries of conquest, diplomacy, and colonization. They shaped the political, social, and economic landscapes of the continent, creating a complex tapestry of power and influence. The British Empire, the largest in history, spanned the globe. From the bustling streets of London to the remote outposts in Africa and Asia, British influence was felt far and wide. The empire's vast network of colonies provided resources and markets that fueled Britain's industrial might, making it a global superpower. The Russian Empire, a sleeping giant, stretched from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Under the rule of Tsar Nicholas II, it was a land of contrasts, with its grand palaces and impoverished peasantry. Despite its internal struggles, the empire's sheer size and resources made it a formidable force in European politics. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires, both in decline, still held sway over vast territories. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of different ethnic groups, struggled to maintain unity. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire, once a dominant power, was referred to as the sick man of Europe, facing internal decay and external pressures. Germany, a rising power, chafed against the established order. Under Kaiser Wilhelm II, Germany sought to assert its place on the world stage, building a powerful military and industrial base. The nation's ambitions and aggressive foreign policy created tensions with its neighbors, setting the stage for future conflicts. Without World War I, these empires might have endured for decades longer. The war acted as a catalyst, accelerating the decline of these once mighty empires. Without it, the political landscape of Europe could have remained relatively stable, with empires continuing to dominate the continent. Their rivalries and internal tensions would have continued, but without the catalyst of war, they might have found other outlets for their ambitions. Diplomatic negotiations, economic competition, and regional conflicts could have been the primary means through which these empires vied for power and influence. The balance of power, so carefully maintained in the years before the war, might have persisted. Alliances and treaties, designed to prevent any one nation from becoming too dominant, could have continued to shape the interactions between these empires, maintaining a delicate equilibrium. Europe, for better or worse, could have remained a continent of empires. The cultural, economic, and political influence of these empires would have continued to shape the lives of millions, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the continent. The most significant change on the map of Europe would have been the survival of the Russian Empire. The Tsar, spared from the disastrous military campaigns of World War I, would not have faced the revolution that swept him from power. Without the Bolsheviks seizing control, Russia would not have become the Soviet Union. Communism, at least in its Soviet form, might never have taken root. Russia, under continued Tsarist rule, would have remained a major player on the world stage. Its vast resources and growing industrial might would have made it a force to be reckoned with. The Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe, was already in decline by 1914. However, without the pressures of World War I, its disintegration might have been slower and less violent. The Ottoman Empire's collapse led to the creation of new nations in the Middle East. Without the war, these nations might never have existed, at least not in their current form. The Middle East, instead of being carved up by the victors of World War I, might have remained under Ottoman control. This would have had profound implications for the region's political and religious landscape. Section 5. A different kind of Entente. The alliances that led to World War I might have evolved differently without the war. The Triple Entente, formed by France, Russia, and Great Britain, might have become a more permanent fixture of European diplomacy. Similarly, the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy might have endured, albeit with adjustments to reflect the changing balance of power. These alliances, instead of being geared towards war, might have focused on economic cooperation and diplomatic solutions. Europe could have witnessed a different kind of Cold War, one fought with trade deals and treaties, not tanks and trenches. Section 6. The American Colossus, dormant. Without World War I, the United States might have remained a relatively isolationist power. The early 20th century was a time of great change and potential for the U.S., but its focus was largely inward. The war forced America onto the world stage, but without it, the U.S. might have been content to focus on its own affairs. The nation's leaders and its people were more concerned with domestic issues, such as industrialization and social reforms. The economic boom that the U.S. experienced during the war years might not have happened. The demand for American goods and materials surged as the Allies needed supplies, leading to rapid industrial growth. The U.S., without the need to supply the Allied war effort, might have experienced slower economic growth. Factories that sprang up to meet wartime demands might never have been built, and the technological advancements driven by the war effort might have been delayed. The U.S. might have remained a regional power focused on its own hemisphere. Its influence might have been limited to the Americas, with less involvement in European and Asian affairs. Its rise to global superpower status might have been delayed, or it might never have happened at all. The absence of a global conflict like World War I would have meant fewer opportunities for the U.S. to assert its dominance on the world stage. The cultural and social landscape of America might have been different as well. The war brought about significant changes in American society, including shifts in gender roles and the great migration of African Americans to northern cities. Technological advancements that were accelerated by the war, such as advancements in aviation and communication, might have progressed at a slower pace. The ripple effects of these changes would have been felt across all aspects of American life. In the realm of international relations, the U.S. might have taken a back seat, allowing other nations to shape the post-war world order. The League of Nations, for instance, might have had a different trajectory without American involvement. Economic policies and trade relations would have been different as well. The U.S. might have focused more on regional trade within the Americas, rather than establishing itself as a global economic leader. Ultimately, the absence of World War I would have led to a very different trajectory for the United States, both domestically and internationally. The American Colossus might have remained dormant, its potential untapped, and its influence confined to its own borders. Section 7. A world of boundless potential. A world without World War I is a world of tantalizing possibilities. Without the devastation of war, technological advancements might have accelerated. The 20th century could have been an era of unprecedented progress. Medicine, science, and technology might have leaped forward, unimpeded by the loss of a generation and the economic ruin of war. The world might have been a very different place, perhaps even a utopia compared to the one we know. Section 8. The specter of nationalism. However, even without World War I, the seeds of conflict would have remained. Nationalism, a potent force in the early 20th century, would not have simply vanished. Ethnic tensions within the Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires would have continued to simmer. Without the war to provide a release valve, these tensions might have boiled over into smaller, regional conflicts. The absence of a major war might have even exacerbated nationalist sentiments. Without a common enemy to unite against, nations might have become even more focused on their own interests and grievances. Section 9. The seeds of discord. Economic competition, too, would have remained a source of potential conflict. Germany's growing industrial might would have continued to challenge Great Britain's economic dominance. Colonial rivalries, particularly in Africa and Asia, would have persisted. Without the war to reshape the global order, these rivalries might have led to clashes between the great powers. The world without World War I might have been a more peaceful place, but it would not have been a utopia. The seeds of discord, sown long before 1914, would have remained. Section 10. Echoes in the void. It is impossible to say for certain what would have happened if World War I never occurred. History is not a laboratory. We cannot rewind the clock and change the variables. However, by exploring this counterfactual scenario, we gain a deeper understanding of the forces that shaped the 20th century. We see how World War I, for all its horrors, was a turning point in human history. It is a reminder that even seemingly insignificant events can have far-reaching consequences. It is a reminder, too, that the peace and prosperity we enjoy today are not guaranteed. Section 11. A world unborn. The world without World War I is a world that never was. It is a world of might-have-beens and what-ifs, but it is a world worth pondering, for it reminds us of the fragility of peace and the enduring power of the past to shape the present. It is a world that challenges us to imagine a different future, a future where the lessons of the past are not forgotten and where the horrors of war are never repeated.